On the 4th of July weekend in 1966, 3 young women head to the Indiana Dunes State Park to enjoy the beach and swim in Lake Michigan. Despite the over 8,000 other beachgoers there that day, the women somehow vanished without a trace. Their disappearances spawned many theories over the years, but none bring investigators closer to finding out what happened to Ann Miller, Patricia Blough, and Renee Bruhl that day. This is their story.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Amy.
And you're listening to She Goes by Jane. At the end of this episode and every episode, we will be joined by a special guest who will read an original poem by Amy Baker about the women we're featuring. This week, we are joined by Meredith Gerritsen.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Amy.
Vanessa, this episode is a journey.
What kind of journey?
Okay, to start, it does feature 3 women who disappeared at the same time, which is not necessarily unheard of.
Right, like I think we've done that before. Oh, are they more at the same time than usual? Because we've talked about disappearances happening close together.
So this is all 3 of them were together at the same time.
Oh, Okay. I don't think we've done that. We've done 2.
2, yes.
But I don't think we've ever talked about 3.
Right. I mean, because we go by that adage of there's safety in numbers, right? This is not.
So we're destroying any idea of safety we had by going around in numbers.
Yes. And then the other thing is that since these 3 women have disappeared, there has been a lot of theories connected to it, and some of those take some dramatic twists. And we're going to discuss some of those theories today, which we don't usually do, but in this case we are.
Is it kind of necessary just because of how absurd they are?
Yeah, I think it is necessary to kind of address the directions the kind of inquiries have gone. And I want to make clear, I don't have a pet theory exactly.
You don't even? No. Not even after doing all the research, you're still whoa, I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened. No.
Okay.
But it's important to note that when we actually get to the part of the theories, we are going to be talking about some sensitive topics. So if anyone has any tinier listening ears, just forewarning you, we are going to be talking and touching on issues of abortion access. And then there's a really kind of semi-graphic direction one of the theories takes. So that is definitely not child appropriate.
I don't think most of what we cover is child appropriate.
It is not, but just in case.
So this is extra not child appropriate.
This is extra not child appropriate, to be clear. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so just in case any kids are in the vicinity, is what I'm saying.
Headphones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The story of these 3 women really begins on July 2nd, 1966, near Chicago. That's when 20-year-old Ann Miller backed down her driveway of the home she shared with her parents in Rockdale Circle in Lombard, Illinois. It was early for a Saturday, but she had to drive 7 miles to Westchester to her friend Patricia Blough's house. Patricia was 19 that summer. She'd graduated from Proviso West High School in Maywood before working as a secretary at Sears and Roebuck Company for 6 months. But by that summer, she was working for Commonwealth Edison. This was quite a change from the summers of her youth when she lived in Wisconsin, and her family would take summers at a lake cottage. And it's where she learned how to swim and kind of enjoy lake life. So it's not surprising that when Anne pulled into Patricia's Drury Lane driveway in her 1955 Buick a little after 6:30 a.m., their ultimate destination was Indiana Dunes State Park, where they planned on spending the hot summer day at the beach and enjoying Lake Michigan. On her way out the door, Patricia called over her shoulder to her mother that they would be home early that day because a third friend, Renee, had to be home in time to make dinner for her husband.
So those are the 3 friends going out together, Anne, Patricia, and Renee?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, Patricia and Anne Long, the 2 had met through their mutual love of horses. Patricia was an avid horsewoman and had owned a saddle horse before purchasing Hank, a thoroughbred who, that weekend, was in Winnipeg. In fact, Patricia had just come from Winnipeg, where her boyfriend's father was a trainer at the track. Hank had won money the weekend she was there, and she left before picking up her earnings. So it's clear Patricia was deep in the horse world, and that's how she met Anne. Anne had recently worked for Oak Brook Polo Club exercising horses, but she hadn't been in recently because she'd been injured in a fall while working. Anne was also a horse owner, and the 2 kept their horses at the same stables. after picking up Patricia, Ann next headed to West Fulton Street in Chicago, another roughly 8-mile drive. Their last stop was to pick up Renee Bruhl. Renee was also 19, and she and Patricia had gone to high school together. Unlike Patricia, Renee had attended a 1-year course at medical technology school after she graduated from high school and had already gotten married. It's about an hour from Renee's home to Indiana Dunes, so they set off. Along the way, they make one known stop, and that was to a drugstore where they picked up a bottle of suntan lotion for $1.53.
Now we would pick up sunscreen.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It would cost a lot more than $1.53.
Yes.
By 10 a.m., they make it to the park. Now, it's 4th of July weekend, and the beach is packed. Anne, Patricia, and Renee are just 3 of the estimated 8,600 people who are packed into the beach that day. And they parked among 2,177 other cars in the lot.
That doesn't sound very fun.
So 2 people for you.
Very people-y.
Yeah. So even though it's just 8 a.m., even though it's just 10 a.m., it's already hot, 88 degrees, and they hike the 3/4 of a mile from the parking lot to the beach, where they set up a spot for themselves on the sand. The 3 set out their blanket on the beach. They'd worn their street clothes to the beach over the top of their bathing suits, but in the heat, they likely soon took those off. Anne had a blue 2-piece bathing suit with a red belt. Patricia was wearing a bright yellow bikini with ruffles, and Renee was in a brown swimsuit with green flowers and gold leaves, and they sat on the beach for a bit before heading out into the water. So as the day is coming to a close, a teenage couple, Mike Yankalasa and Francis Cicero, got the attention of one of the park rangers, Bud Connor. They told them that there were 3 young women who had set up their blanket nearby and left their belongings behind. The couple last saw the women around noon and were concerned because they'd left their purses and they just hadn't come back.
Okay, so is this couple the reason we know, like, so much of what they were wearing and everything?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
So they said that they had seen the 3 women out in the water talking to some guy in a boat at around noon, and that they'd seen the women get into the boat and head west, but they just hadn't come back.
Okay.
Now, despite that their purses were left behind, Bud kind of brushes off this concern of the couple. It was common for men to kind of boat in close to shore and try to convince women to go out on their boats with them. He assumed that the 3 women basically did that day, and they might be out for a moonlit boat ride and would be back later. To secure their items, though, he sort of picks up the corners of the blanket and gathers everything, taking them back to the station, where he spoke to the park superintendent, Williams Feddick, about what he found. He agreed with the assessment, and they sort of set this bundle in the corner, expecting to return them later when the women got back.
Okay, so the women were out, this couple saw them, they got on this boat, and now the park ranger has all their stuff. Okay.
Yep. So all of this isn't concerning until Svedek gets a phone call on Monday morning, this July 4th. And it's from Patricia's father, Harold Blough. He relayed that the 3 women should have arrived at the park around 10 a.m. on Saturday morning and that they were expected home that day, but they never arrived. Now, Svedek immediately recalls the blanket that had been brought in on Saturday night, and he surveyed the items there. There were purses with IDs inside. There was also a set of car keys, and the keys actually had a little key ring with a miniature license plate on it that read 265487. And he checks the lot and finds a matching Buick with that same license plate, and it's parked in this parking lot.
Okay, this has nothing to do with the actual case, but that's really cool. The little license plate.
Yeah.
Key ring is cute.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, how do you get one of those?
Right.
So by 8:50 a.m., he calls the Indiana State Police about these alarming details, and by 10 a.m., Indiana State Trooper Harry Young took possession of the personal effects. These effects were a combination of items from each of the 3 women. It consisted of Patricia's yellow robe and a pair of her sunglasses, along with her transistor radio. In addition, there was a white print towel and her wallet, which had $5 inside of it. Anne had left behind a thermos, a blanket, some jean shorts, and a polo shirt, along with a white bathing cap and a comb. Renee had left her large towel, her shorts, a blouse, cigarettes, her suntan lotion that she'd purchased that day, 25 cents in change, and $55 in checks. So from there, they called the Chicago police and they asked them to run a check on the license plate to confirm who owned the vehicle. And with 20 minutes, they got back a call from Chicago PD. It was registered to Ann Miller. Next, they put in a call to the Westchester police and found that the families of the 3 women had actually put in a missing persons report the night before.
So did they put in the missing persons report the same night that they went missing? Or the
So they
following
went
day?
missing on the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
By the 3rd, their families put in a missing persons report. And on the 4th, they're calling the park superintendent and being like, hey, do you know anything?
So it's being taken really seriously at this point.
Yeah, so at this point, a search for the 3 women begins immediately, but they're still roughly 48 hours from the last time the women were seen. They know that there's potential for a boat to be involved, but the Coast Guard says that there's between 5,000 and 6,000 boats on the lake that day between Chicago and Indiana Dunes. So locating a specific boat at that point was nearly impossible. And so by the next day, there's a massive search of this 2,180-acre park looking for the women. This included volunteers from the nearby missile base and members of the Porter County Sheriff's Posse on horseback. And so while this physical search was happening, they're also looking into details about each of the women. One major thing of note they find immediately is that in Renee's purse, there was an unmailed letter to her husband, Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey was a 21-year-old accounting student, and the letter to him states that she wanted to leave him. She wrote that he spent too much time with his friends and working on hot rod cars.
Not just cars.
Specifically, hot rod cars, right? And this letter was dated 2 weeks before, and it's clear she'd never sent it. On the other hand, it was still in her possession inside her purse. When they asked Jeffrey about his relationship with his wife, he said that he didn't know of any problems in their relationships. I mean, this really strikes me as the kind of guy who, when his wife asks for divorce, would then later say, like, he's going to go tell his friends, like, it just came out of nowhere. I'm not sure what happened.
Well, I think that's probably normal for the time too, right?
Right. But he was like, our marriage is good. And she was like, I want to leave you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They do ask her family about this, and her family basically says that she was probably just upset when she wrote it and that she never sent it because she just thought better of it. But other than that, they're just still trying to figure out what happened. And there's really some mixed thoughts on their disappearance from the start. Some suggest, given that Renee was unhappy, that the disappearance was voluntary.
But all 3 of them?
Right, like why would all 3 of them...
Why wouldn't she just leave?
Yeah, so it's like one of the friends is unhappy in their marriage. Like,
let's all leave.
And why would they leave their personal belongings, which includes money, behind on the beach if that was the case?
Right.
Right. So Jeffrey, though, Renee's husband, he is immediately suspicious of a kidnapping situation, but there are other possibilities like an accident, for instance. So part of the search for the women does include a search of the water and shoreline. In fact, on the night of July 5th, that park superintendent, William Spedick, has a beach buggy go up and down the beach all night, reasoning that if the women had drowned, that their bodies would eventually surface and wash ashore. And he was concerned that this would happen during the night, and he wanted to be sure they were found as quickly as possible if that was the case. Because there were 3 missing women at the same time, this story gets picked up in newspapers across the country immediately. So this isn't a case where their disappearances are underreported. And as such, they get a lot of leads. And a lot of leads, I mean like hundreds of calls, and they're a bit all over the place. So remember, like eyewitness accounts can be tricky and they're not always factual. And there were so many people at the beach that day. So they do get a call from 2 men in South Holland, Illinois, and one reported from the couple who saw the 3 women entering the water. So these kind of corroborate each other. They all describe the 3 women entering a boat driven by 1 man. They all described him as being in his early 20s with wavy dark hair and a tan. Apparently a well-developed tan.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Different era.
And there's only 1 man on this whole boat that they know of.
Right. They said he's wearing a beach jacket, and at least one of the witnesses mentioned one of the women wearing a yellow bathing suit and was able to pick out the 3 women from like a photo lineup.
What's a beach jacket? Do you know what this piece of clothing is?
Yeah, so it's just basically like a lightweight jacket.
Like a windbreaker?
I mean, it's like the 1960s, so it's not quite windbreakery.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to start wearing a beach jacket
I think
now?
so. I mean,
Okay.
it sounds beach appropriate.
Right. Well, I'm never at the beach because that's too much sun, but... Okay, so anyway, back to our story. Yes. So this affirms this story that there's evidence to suggest they got into the boat, so the search in the water intensifies. They eventually find some debris from a boat washed ashore. This was like some metal, some styrofoam, pieces that were believed to be like 3 boat seats, as well as some oil and gasoline cans and some oil-soaked wood.
So like some sort of wreckage?
Right, so that seems like a possibility, right? So now we have 2 distinct possibilities. One, that they ran away. One, that there was some sort of boat accident. But there's no way to link this find of this debris to the missing women. And besides that, there aren't any reports of any missing boats from this time period. So the search continues primarily by air and water. There are scuba divers looking for them. There's an army amphibious duck that goes to the lake bottom. It's intense, right? There's also a ground search looking through 250 cabins in the area, talking to everyone they could find. When someone wasn't home, they're literally peering in windows looking for them. Finally, Svedek makes an appeal again, asking everyone to contact authorities if they know something. With this, they received about 100 more calls. One of these came from a drugstore owner who claims he saw Patricia in his store a few days before, and that she had bought 3 birthday cards, a pair of earrings, 3 pairs of stockings, and a couple of love story-styled magazines. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything, but they took it. And like many calls, that one wasn't particularly helpful, right?
Right. What would these items have to do with that?
Right. One group that they talked to, though, was 3 men from Michigan City, and they claimed they had pulled up in their boat and spotted the women in chin-deep water. So to give some perspective, Anne was the shortest at 5'2", and Renee the tallest at 5'9", to give you some idea of how deep they were. The men said that they had tried to convince the women to get in their boat, but they were turned down after one of the women, presumably, if this is true, Renee, said she was married.
I mean, it's not super deep still.
No.
No, it's not dangerously deep.
But for some reason, this detail kind of reinvigorates a theory that the women had all drowned. And I'm not sure why, but I'm guessing it's because they were out so far.
Yeah, because it certainly wasn't the depth of it.
Right. I don't know. But Patricia and Renee were described as strong swimmers. Remember, Patricia had grown up around lakes, and some people said that she could swim at least 20 to 30 miles at a time, which is quite the... Yeah. I can swim 0 feet at a time, so I'm just impressed. And Anne was described as a fair swimmer. There were other calls in the mix, too. Some said that they saw them get into a boat with 3 men, some with 2, some with 1.
That's not helpful.
No. Some people even claimed they saw the 3 women getting food on the beach after noon, which is when the couple says they saw the 3 last at their blanket. So that would indicate that they'd made it back to shore after the couple saw them leave with the man.
Okay, so the couple last saw them?
At noon.
At noon, and people saw them
post-noon.
After noon getting food.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
Yes. So again, though, eyewitness testimony is kind of...
Right, because couldn't it be other women they saw?
Well, there are, 8,600 people.
Right.
Someone's beach, right?
Bound to look similar to them.
Exactly. Now, they end up during this search locating a student filmmaker who had been filming the beach. And through these reports and his film, they end up centering on 2 different boats as a possibility. One is a 26-foot to 28-foot cabin cruiser, and one is a 16-foot to 18-foot Temerian roundabout. And that one's more distinct because it's a 3-hull design. And this one is the one connected to the man with the dark, wavy hair. But with all these reports, the people who own these boats aren't coming forward, and investigators are kind of still grasping at straws.
This sounds like an impossible situation just with the number of people, the number of boats, potential for them being missing on land or water.
Yeah.
That's just too much.
Right. They're not really sure where to look, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, really, interest and the investigation is already fading. And that's when another news story from Chicago kind of comes in and grabs the headlines. And some of our listeners might be familiar with this story, which is there's a brutal murder of 8 student nurses on the night of July 13th at their residence. The murderer was identified 2 days later. And interestingly, he was questioned about the disappearance of these 3 women. He denied involvement, but still, his name is kind of floated around in this case as a possibility for what might have happened to them.
Does it seem like a plausible possibility, though?
I didn't dive too much into this theory. I'm not sure how the dates match up, right? But in this case, I just feel like there's just like so much talk about theories, right? So we have they drowned.
And are there other known victims of the guy who?
No.
So we don't know if it's an isolated incident or.
Yeah, so he had his own issues. But at this point, we have they drowned. They were in a boating accident. They ran away on their own free will. They ran into a killer as possibilities, right? Just because like people just.
Right, and the husband is like they were kidnapped. It's like so there's like so many possibilities.
Yes. And so for the families of these three, they're desperate to find their loved ones, but they each have their own individual thoughts, right? So the husband kidnapping, right? The most actively involved in the search is Patricia's father, Harold. He owned a television store, but he was also a lieutenant colonel in the Illinois Civil Air Patrol. So he led his own air search looking for them. Harold said in an interview that he's doing it because if he can find one small fact that aids police, he wants to be able to do that. He then goes on to say, "In my heart, I feel like this is an abduction. My daughter is a regular reader of the newspapers. If she were free to move, she would have read newspaper accounts of the search for her and her friends, and she would have come home. If she were running away, she would have taken more clothing and her contact lenses, her cosmetic case, and the keys for her car. Besides that, she was completely wrapped up in her horse, and she would not have run out on Hank."
I've met horse people before, and I believe this.
Yes.
I think that they're like there's like cat and dog people, but then there's horse people.
Right.
And as much as we love our cats and dogs,
there's like a different, like deep emotional connection.
There's like, I think just because they're so hard to maintain, there's like probably.
Right. And she was like so excited about Hank.
Yeah. There's so much work involved in that kind of love, right?
Yeah.
So.
Now, Renee's father, Joseph Slinecko, though, he said that he thought the women were still alive and that they may have left the area voluntarily. He thought the reason they hadn't shown up is because they were basically too frightened to. Basically, that their disappearance caused quite a national stir at this point.
I don't know if I'd see them as being like so scared to come back because of that.
Right. Basically, the search has kind of come to a close after about a week after they disappeared. They're still doing investigations. And even though the search has come to a close about a week after they disappeared, the investigation continued. Investigators learned some startling facts. First, there were rumors that both Anne and Patricia had become romantically involved with two married, unnamed men. There were reports that these men might be ex-cons, and some said that they dealt in drugs. And Patricia, who is responsible and a with-it kind of woman, started staying out late, not coming home till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, even when she had to work. In fact, there were reports that both Anne and Patricia stayed out late the night before they disappeared.
So for sure they had been staying out late?
Yeah, so in some interviews since, like, Patricia's younger sister has talked about, like, how her sister, like, stopped coming home. Like, there was a different change of behavior happening.
So the change of behavior in the late nights are definitely not rumors, but the married men thing might be.
Yeah, so, Patricia in particular has been connected to a bunch of different men. Like, I'm not sure who they mean specifically here, that she was dating a married man with some criminal past. We do know she has an ex-boyfriend who did have a criminal past. She did have a boyfriend she was seeing whose father was a trainer for her horse. So she was seeing some men at the time.
Okay.
In addition, in March of 1966, so roughly 4 months before Patricia disappeared, friends said that they saw an injury to her face. They said it looked like it was caused by maybe a fist, but when they asked her specifically about it, she said that she was in some trouble and that it involved some syndicate people that she knew. And Patricia's sister said that Patricia took out a will 2 weeks before she went missing, and that she conveyed that she was in terrible trouble and that nobody could help her, and that whomever she told would also be in trouble.
So this is changing now, because it just says like 3 girls out at the beach, and now
there's layers.
There are things surfacing, mostly about Patricia, right?
Right. To add to the layers, friends also reported that Anne had recently told them that she was 3 months pregnant and that her plan was to go to a home for unwed mothers.
Okay, so Anne's the unmarried friend.
Anne's the unmarried friend who...
Patricia has all this stuff going on.
Yes.
Anne's the unmarried friend who is pregnant.
But was also potentially seeing a married man.
And then we have Renee who wants to leave her husband but didn't let him know that yet.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe these girls did run away together.
Right, because that brings us back to, like, did they disappear on their own or not?
Maybe they're just like, I have problems, you have problems, let's go.
Let's go. But they left, again, like, their purses, their car. They left money behind.
But maybe it was planted. Like,
To make
leaving it,
people
like,
believe.
purposeful.
I don't know, right?
I don't know.
Now, all of this personal history information is coming about, but investigators still can't piece together what might have happened here. And that leads us to some of the most prevalent theories about their disappearances.
And so this is where you're going to get into the theories that you are not sure about, but are interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I think it also brings about some more of their history, right? So the first theory, and the major proponent of this first theory, seems to be from a reporter called Dick Wiley. He was one of the first reporters on the scene at Indiana Dunes on July 4th, and for the rest of his life, he could not stop wondering about what happened to these women. And so he sort of dedicates his life to it. He follows every lead and every interview he could. He believed that some things went wrong with the case from the start, like that there were too few investigators on the case, and that these investigators were not from the area where the women went missing, meaning they're not familiar.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is. I mean, they did not put a lot of, energy, I think, behind the disappearance long term.
So they're just like, these three women did like a quick look and then let it go?
Well, I mean, I think like other stuff is happening. It's like the 1960s,
Yeah,
in Chicago area. Like there's other stuff going on. So his argument has always been like that he actually put more energy in. He believed that he had conducted more interviews and followed the case more closely than anyone in law enforcement had. And to be clear, Dick was up to searching everything. At one point, he was contacted by a psychic who put her finger on a map and it landed on Saugatuck, Michigan. And then he and the psychic went to this location. And when they're there, they're at a diner and they spoke to a waitress who remembered the three women. And she claimed they were sitting in the same booth as Dick and the psychic were.
Did you just like start reading a movie plot to me?
Basically, yeah. Yeah, right. So this really ends up having nothing to do with the case, right? But you can see that Dick was really following every possible lead. And in the earliest days, it sounds like what he thought might have happened to the women is that they were trafficked. Later, though, through his research, he starts to believe that it's possible that what happened was an illegal abortion that went awry. Now, in this theory, the idea is that one or more of the women were pregnant. We knew at this point that Anne had told friends that she was. In this theory, the women leave their belongings on the beach because they plan to return to them shortly, and they wade out into the water to meet with a man named Ralph Largo Jr. We'll be back in a moment.
So we think Ralph is the wavy-haired man?
Right, yeah. So Dick Wiley believes it's him because he matches the description, right?
Okay.
Wavy-haired man on a smaller boat. Now, Ralph was the nephew of Helen and Frank Largo, and I tried to find out more information specifically about them, but apparently they ran an abortion operation back when abortion was illegal.
So then it is quite plausible that he could have picked up the girls to bring them
for abortion services.
Yeah.
Yeah. We touched a little bit on abortion in our episode on Dorothy Arnold, but basically it's pretty likely that a number of missing persons cases are connected to abortion services. When done legally in controlled settings, they're actually considered one of the safest medical procedures someone can have. That isn't so much true when abortion services are received outside medical practices, where it's harder to understand and validate providers' education, skill level, cleanliness of the location, all of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to understand that pregnant people will seek out abortion services, whether it's legal or not. And I'm like so passionate about this because one of the side projects that I'm working on outside of this podcast deals with this directly.
Yeah, and I think if you talk to any like older people that have been around when abortion was illegal, they all know someone who either died having one or ended up really sick. Like I know my mom does and has told me about that growing up, and I think it was kind of common.
Yeah, so like, I'm not going to get too much into the story that I'm working on, but like there's like all of these women, like this whole town knew about this illegal abortion operation that was happening. And it's like fascinating to me, like in the Deep South. But anyway, I could not find much information specifically about the Largos themselves. So if more people know their history, please send me some links. But my understanding is that Dick Wiley believed what happened is that Ralph Largo Jr., after picking up the women, then transferred them to the larger boat that was mentioned. And that basically this was a case of a botched abortion situation where the women were handled or dispatched, if you will, to hide the evidence of this.
But I mean, even in that theory, wouldn't it be more likely that only like, say, if 2 of the 3 was pregnant, only 1 of them is botched? And like now what's still happening to the other 2 women?
So the idea there would be that they're witnesses.
So we just got rid of that.
Yeah.
But gone. Okay.
Gone.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Eey.
It's, to be clear, this is just a theory, but it's one that has stuck quite closely to this case and was the one that I heard initially presented almost factually the first time I heard about these women's stories. So it's this idea that this illegal abortion situation happened.
And people are holding on to this one as the main one.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I could not find any evidence that the Largos operated a abortion clinic on a watercraft.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that that didn't happen. That's definitely did, particularly in international waters. But like this would not have been. And I can't find any evidence of this. But on the other hand, Dick Wiley had investigated this case quite a bit, and this was his main theory. The next primary theory is that these disappearances are tied to the stables, tricolor stables, where all 3 women had ridden horses before. This theory, it's going to get really complicated, and we have to go back a bit to understand this one a bit more. First, there are several brothers by the last name of Jane. And they were known, particularly in the Chicago area, for their skill with horses.
Okay.
One of the brothers started a stable, but his fiancée actually died by suicide through ingesting arsenic, which, by the way, one of my other projects touches on arsenic, and that's a pretty brutal death.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a common form of suicide.
Back in the day.
It's a murdery thing usually, isn't it?
Well, both.
Because it won't feel good.
No.
No.
So the brother who had started the stables, after experiencing this loss of his fiancée, he also dies by suicide. Not long after, one of the other brothers, who we are going to call S.
Why?
Okay, I'm not saying that he has anything to do with the 3 women that we're talking about, but he's not the best guy. So we're just going to call him.
So he could or might not have anything to do, but he's just not a great guy anyway.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go with S.
We're going with S. Anyway, S starts his own stable and he's quite successful. But then his younger brother, George, also starts his own stable business, and this causes a massive conflict between the 2 brothers, mostly coming from S's side, because by all accounts, George was just better at the business.
So did anyone take over their other brother's stable?
No, they kind of like
started
their own.
So S just starts his own, George just starts his own.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so S's career from the start is kind of rocky. Like, he had his stable burned down and 10 of his horses died in the fire. He was also sued by a woman named Ruth DeVore, who stated that S had purposely scared her horse, causing her to be thrown, which fractured her spine. Unfortunately, the jury ruled in favor of S. But anyway. Now, S and George had constant conflict, and there's a lot of unconfirmed incidences involving S. For instance, when George and his family were wintering in Florida, their home was destroyed in a fire, and many suspected S of this crime. In 1961, the 2 had horses competing against each other at an annual horse show, and George's daughter Linda overheard S saying, "I'll kill you, you SOB."
To George?
Yes.
Oh. He's clearly not the better brother.
No. Because George's horses had won, and S was, like, really angry about this.
That's why he was going to kill him, because his horse won?
Well, like, okay, to be clear, we're not talking about, like, local horse shows kind of horses here.
Okay.
Like, George's stables had 104 horses, and he was making about $400,000 a year, which is about $4 million in today's money.
Okay, so these guys have money.
Yes.
They have money, and we're not talking regular horse ownership. We're talking like very big money making
Horses.
horses. It's a business.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, contemporarily speaking, some of the Jane family compete in the Olympics in horses.
Okay.
So, like,
not that excuses S's behavior.
no, but there's like a lot of money.
There's a lot at stake.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's this threat out there. And later that year, someone fired 28 bullets into George's office at the Tricolor riding stables. The only reason George wasn't killed is it's likely that he was worried something was afoot. And so he left his Cadillac out front, left his office lights on, slipped out the back door, and drove home in another vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay.
Okay. Others say that over the years, vehicles would try to run George off the road, and once he and his wife found sticks of dynamite outside their back door, and the only reason they weren't harmed is that basically the fuse had gone out.
Wow, and we really think S is responsible for all of this craziness?
Well, yeah. Okay, so George's horses, now, again, these are like expensive horses. They are not safe either. His mare, Shotseal, had been injected with turpentine while she was away at a horse show, and no one could prove who killed her, but she died.
She died. So his horse was murdered?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's been
that's
many
our first
attempts.
Horse murder that we've ever talked about.
This is our first horse murder, right? Okay. So that brings us, and I swear these connect.
Yeah, like, where are you going here?
Right,
what is
like,
this?
Took a side detour.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. That brings us to June 14th, 1965. So this is 1 year before the women disappear.
Mm-hmm.
That's when 22-year-old Cheryl Lynn Rood, who was a horsewoman who trained and competed for Tricolor, won a blue ribbon for the stables. So she actually won it the day before, so June 13th. Okay. The next day, she stops to chat with George after having lunch with his daughters. She was going to leave shortly after, but George said he was going to stay at the office a bit longer and that she could use his 1965 Cadillac. He really liked his Cadillacs.
Mm-hmm.
So Cheryl, she gets into the vehicle, turns on the ignition, and the whole car blew up, taking Cheryl with it.
Wow. I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
So that was meant for him, obviously, but wow, poor Cheryl.
Yeah, so later they would find out that someone had actually attached 3 sticks of dynamite underneath the hood, and it was triggered when she turned the vehicle on.
I have never heard of like so much use of
Dynamite?
just like dynamite before like this.
Yeah. In our coverage of like Donna Nelton, her story, I remember being surprised about like dynamite, but I guess like it was like a 60s thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
Now, okay, like you said, it was probably pretty clear to most people that George was the target, but they still have George take a lie detector test just to see if he had any intent to harm Cheryl.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No. He passed. S was asked to do the same. He just refused.
Because he might not pass.
Right. Now, the investigation into Cheryl's death led investigators to 2 men who claimed that they were hired by S to kill George and that this attempt had actually killed Cheryl. One even said that he'd been the one hired to shoot up George's office. Now, this gets a bit more complicated and isn't the direction we're heading in, but basically this case ends up falling apart, so they can't move forward with the case. And it stays that way until the arrest of a man in 1997, and he's convicted of Cheryl's murder in 1999. But basically the story is, yes, he was hired by S to kill George.
And got arrested as an elderly man, I'm guessing.
So he was
from this time stamp.
Yeah. Okay. Now, why is any of this important? Right. Cheryl's murder is important, not just because of what happened to Cheryl, but also we know that Cheryl was at Tricolor when the murder occurred. And this is the same stable that the women who are missing used. So some believe that it's possible that the trouble that Patricia was worried about around the time of her disappearance had to do with this incident that happened in 1965. Some speculate that one or all of the women could have been witnesses to or had connected the dots in Cheryl's death. Okay, that's a lot of beliefs, but because of yet there's not clear evidence that's been made public to confirm any of this. So the idea here is that they were harmed because they...
Harmed, or maybe could they have run away because of that too? Like either way? Okay.
Yeah, so that's a lot of beliefs, but on the other hand, S actually was quite murdery.
I mean, he murdered a horse and spent a lot of kind of like Wile E. Coyote type attempts on his brother.
Well, he's only suspected in the murder of the horse. They never arrested anyone in the horse murder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know, but for accuracy's sake.
Okay.
We also know that in 1969, George stepped up his protection detail, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Good job.
He hired this man, Frank Michel Sr., who's a former police chief, to serve as his protection detail. In order to protect George, Frank placed a tracking device on S's Cadillac, because he also drove Cadillacs, so they could keep track of him. Unfortunately, S traded his vehicle in every year, and he did so soon after the device was placed. And the mechanic where it was sold found it and disabled it. Not knowing this and assuming the device was faulty, Frank Michel Sr. sent his 28-year-old son to S's home to replace the battery on the device.
So he's like sneaking into his yard at night to like...
Yeah, because they think what happened, the reason it's not working is because the battery is dead.
So he sends his kid to like replace the battery at this guy's home.
Yes.
That's like really, really risky to the son.
Right. And S did shoot him 9 times.
No.
Yeah.
He killed him?
Yes. So he claims that the son had shot him first, and
Oh.
he really leaned into this idea that he was protecting himself from a threat. And obviously he didn't know why this man was on his property. I doubt he'd be too thrilled it was for a tracking device situation.
Right.
But he basically was like, I saw an intruder. He shot at me. I shot back.
Wow. Okay. So that poor 28-year-old and his dad must have felt horrible.
Yeah. So not long after that, on October 28th, 1970, George was in his basement rec room getting ready to play bridge when someone opened fire on his home, killing him.
So he actually got murdered too?
Yeah.
Well, Amy.
It's a lot of murder. So much murder.
All over horses.
Yeah, right? It's really like one brother is better than the I don't know. They eventually matched a car scene in the area to a suspect, and when they arrested him, they found him with $10,000 in cash on him, some of which had S's fingerprints. Now, S actually does serve time for his brother's death, but kind of this broader picture of S emerges in the aftermath of this. You thought it was bad already.
Wait, it's gonna get worse?
Yes.
Okay.
So George's wife said that in 1955, George had come to her and said that he had evidence of something S was involved in and that it would send S to the electric chair if it came out.
This is back in 1955. Okay, so
Yeah.
wow, okay.
And he planned to use this to keep S from harassing him further. So the dispute between the two brothers is more than just about horses. There's also this extra layer of secret keeping.
So what did he do that would get him the electric chair?
Okay.
Do we know?
We're definitely off on a tangent here, but this is a bit of a side story, and it's one that I alluded to earlier. So, to be clear, George never actually used this information he claimed to have. Some had originally theorized that it had to do with the murders of 3 young boys, Robert Peterson, who's 14, and 2 brothers, John and Anton Schuessler, who were 13 and 11. The 3 had gone missing in Chicago on October 16th, 1955. They'd gone to a movie and bowling that night and then disappeared. 2 days later, their naked bodies were found in the Robinson Wood Forest Preserve. They'd been strangled to death.
What? And we think George thinks S did this?
No.
Oh, okay. Jeez.
Well, yes.
What?
Okay.
So what's S's connection that George is like, yeah, he's gonna get
Okay, well,
the death penalty?
some people had said that the night the boys disappeared, they had heard screams coming from S's stables, the one located on Peterson Avenue. And then the boys were naked. Their bodies did have traces of fertilizer of the type used at the stable. And they did talk to S about this, but he, of course, denied involvement. One rumor at the time, back in the 50s, is that the boys, trying to escape the rain that night, popped into the stables and witnessed something they shouldn't, leading to their murders.
Something else led to their murders?
Right, yeah, you might be wondering what that is. A sign painter who had worked in the stables said that all kinds of things went on at the stables and that he himself had been witness to a young blonde woman having relations with a horse under direction of S.
I don't even know where to go with this. Like, what? What?
Yes.
So he was directing this woman and a horse and then the boys saw it. So then they got murdered by who? By S?
By S.
And then why are they naked? And Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Did you have to deep dive into that to make this script?
I did not. Thank God.
God.
No.
Okay.
Okay. To be
Okay.
clear, it's not clear if the sign painter was saying that that's what they witnessed. He's just saying that's what he had witnessed happening at the stable, and I don't know the veracity of his claims. What actually ends up coming to light in the 1990s is that the boys were actually lured there by a different young man, and that Robert, the oldest of the boys, had walked in on this guy sexually assaulting the younger brothers.
Okay. Which guy? Just like a guy?
Yeah, I'm not going to use his name.
Okay. But not S.
Not S.
Okay. So somebody walked in on his
friends being
the two brothers
assaulted.
being assaulted.
Right. And so he attacks, but this guy ends up killing all 3 children. And S helped hide the crimes because he didn't want it connected to his stables. So he participated in a
That sounds more likely.
hide it kind of way.
I mean, the other stuff might have been going on too, but this sounds like more of what would have happened to the boys, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I would also be remiss in not mentioning that S and his associate, who I won't name here, also have connections to Helen Brock, who's a missing candy heiress and horsewoman.
The Brock candy, like the actual Brock candy?
Yeah.
That we all buy?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a missing Brock?
Yes.
And she is somehow connected to S.
She was involved in the horse industry at the same time, and she had a connection with one of S's close friends.
This is just insane because, like, people like to say that people now are, you know.
Oh, like the what's wrong with people
like,
these
what's
days
wrong
kind
with
of thing?
people these days? What was wrong with people these days? Like, in
Right.
the 50s and 60s.
Lead paint. I don't know.
I don't know. But, like, I don't think we're actually getting worse than this.
This is pretty bad.
This is really bad.
Yeah.
Like, we are not. No. Okay.
Yeah.
So are we going to learn more about Helen at some point?
Well, I was wondering if we should do an episode about Helen.
I mean, considering
we've mentioned her. Yeah.
Maybe we should.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, her story is incredibly sad. So, yeah. So we could talk about Helen in the future.
Sure.
So, okay. S has this complicated history, but did he have something to do with the disappearances of Renee, Patricia, and Anne? There's still debate, of course. There's 2 pieces that weigh in favor of his involvement. One is that George's phone number, along with the phone number of S's wife at the time, were found in the women's belongings on the beach, indicating like it's not just a passive connection here, right? Like, why do they have S's wife's phone number?
So they have George's phone number and S's wife's phone number. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The other is that apparently he had jokingly said to a sheriff in El Reno, Oklahoma, a place he frequented to buy horses, that he had 3 bodies buried under his house.
How do you jokingly say that to a sheriff?
I don't know, but he did. So, like, was that a joke? Is that a joke?
Have we not looked?
I don't know. And is it these missing women? They actually never find out more because the sheriff was killed in a tractor accident shortly after.
Should we tell them now? Can we find out where they lived? And, like, send some policemen over to, like...
Can you just check?
Can you just, like, dig up this house? I don't know. Is that unreasonable? I don't feel like it's unreasonable given this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they were going to follow up. They probably did, but to what extent, I'm not sure. It's just that, like, you have S out there saying that there are 3 bodies. So is it the 3 women? Is it somebody else?
Well, the 3s in this story are, like, nauseating.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
But the real core of this story is that we'll continue to wrestle with in terms of missing persons cases is that there's so many different things that could have happened to these women, but they don't know for certain. Like, there's so many theories and it's impossible to say what happened to them. So we have, they ran away.
That's the one I'm hoping for. I hope they were just like, okay, we know too much. We're not happy with our lives the way they are. And that they're, like, living a really great life in a different country right now.
Right. So they ran away. They drowned. They were in a boat accident. What else? Oh, abortion. They encountered a killer.
Mm-hmm.
They encountered or knew too much about S's dealings. Is that all of them? Like, there's a lot of theories.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories.
Yeah.
I know my favorite one, and nobody dies. I mean, except for all the other people that have clearly been murdered.
Right. So Patricia's sister says what I think my thoughts are, which is that we hope as people get older and near the end of their lives that they'll talk. We know that that won't be the case for S, who passed away many years ago, but I hope someone knows something and that they'll find it in themselves to let those who still love these three women know what happened to them.
We are now going to listen to Amy's poem, Bloom, read by Meredith Garretson. This fall, Meredith will star in the world premiere play, Blood of the Lamb, off-Broadway at 59E59 theaters in New York. She is currently starring as Kate Hawthorne in the hit TV show Resident Alien, and her past TV credits include The Offer, Fosse Verdon, Stargirl, Chicago Med, New Amsterdam, Prodigal Son, The Good Fight, and Elementary. She is starring in the upcoming feature film Friendship opposite Paul Rudd. Her theater credits include As You Like It, Robin Hood, Dancing at Lunasa, and Paint Made Flesh. She is a founding member of Society Theater Company.
Bloom. Ann Miller, 21. Renee Bruhl, 19. Patricia Blough, 19. Missing since July 2nd, 1966, from Indiana Dunes State Park, Chesterton, Indiana. 1. 47 miles of city, then open road, then lake. She drives with both hands on the wheel, head cocked to the side to take in all the laughter. Like heliotropic flowers, they follow the sun. Faces flushed and filaments of hair twisting in the wind, tangling on lips waxed with cherry lip balm. She dangles her hand outside, and at 60 miles an hour catches the air in her palm. At the beach, she slides down a Barkhan dune, the world giving way beneath her. She feels the burn of the sand, the heat of every granule. She shimmies out of her shorts as though every man is watching, as though every man can see the curve of her belly, the swelling in her breasts. Splaying her fingers around her navel, she frames a square. Beneath her fingers, the world rests inside, body curled end to end. 2. She sifts quartz and garnet through her fingers, pushes down until the sand pushes back. She wishes the earth was less resistant, would let her sink down, cradle her in silence, in a place where her husband isn't, where his voice can't reach. Topside, it's all noise. Children sluicing through the sand, women flipping the pages of magazines, water lazing its way forward and back. She silences the hum in her ribcage with normalcy. Smile, laugh, smooth on sunscreen. These are all ways to escape the clawing in her throat. She adjusts her purse, moves it close, but then it is too close. Moves it further away, but it seems out of reach. Inside, the letter she'll never send, the one that would ease the pain from her limbs. 3. In another country, her horse races against the pull of dirt. A sure thing, they say, though she'll never know. For her, the fight is water. When it purls around her hips, she founders, thrashes her hands out. Nearby, her friends ride out the small waves, sling their bodies forward and let the water cinch them around their waists. They wade out so far that soon she is drifting them toward the boat. With every step, plants grasp her ankles. She casts herself toward metal, plastic, veneered wood, the last to get on board. The man's fingers wrap around her wrist, press deep into the knob of bone there. The boat is white, its inside turquoise, like a half-opened shell. Running her fingers through her hair, the ends dampened by that seething thing below them, the girl smiles. She joins her friends on the fold-out seats and stretches her legs before her, absorbs the sun. Soon, her skin will bloom red.
For more information about our show or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Amy.